Hello, my name is Larissa, and I would like to talk about interpersonal relationships. But first, I would like to share with you a couple of analogies that would hopefully help me explain what I would like to explain. So the first analogy is this. If you have a bottle that says vitamin C, and I know it says vitamin C because I wrote it, that's why it looks homemade. So you have a bottle that says vitamin C, but inside you have vitamin D. And I know it's vitamin D because I put it there. Okay, I'm going to ask a rhetorical question. If you have that, and if you took the vitamin that's inside, what would your body metabolize? The vitamin that is on the label or the vitamin that is inside? I know it's a rhetorical question. It's the vitamin that's inside. Another example, a little more extreme. If you have rat poison and you put a label that says flour, and you take the rat poison and you make bread with it and you eat it, what would your body metabolize? The label or the content? Again, rhetorical question. Okay, next analogy. Let's say a person gets a job at a company. The person gets a job as let's say a janitor, okay? That person starts working as a janitor. But then the boss comes one day and says, I need you to do our accounting, the accounting of the company, the books and stuff. And the person could say, I don't think so, because I wasn't hired for that. But let's say the person knows how to do that and is an accountant and wants to do it. Okay, the person can start doing that, the keeping the books and all that. But the person is going to expect to get a different title and also a raise in his or her salary, right? Makes sense. Something similar that happens in professional relationships, something similar happens in interpersonal relationships with a few differences. The difference is that in professional relationships, the duties and responsibilities are very clear and very defined, and in interpersonal relationships, they're implied. There are duties and responsibilities, but they're not as clear and defined. The other difference with interpersonal relationships is that, unlike with professional relationships, in the personal relationships, we have feelings. In professional dynamics, we can get a job and not love the people, our co-workers. We don't have to. But in personal relationships, there's usually emotions, feelings that connect us to those people. And those emotions, those feelings, sometimes make us not as objective as we would be in a professional relationship. So, even though the duties and responsibilities are still there, the lines are not as defined as they are in professional relationships. Now, back to the example of the vitamins and the labels. Let's say that the person who is taking the vitamin doesn't know that the label and the content are not the same. Okay? The person takes it, that person is going to believe that he or she took the vitamin that's on the label. The reason why this happens is because the rational mind is the only organ in the human experience that believes in lies. The body doesn't believe in lies. The heart doesn't believe in lies. The unconscious mind doesn't believe in lies either. Only the mind, the rational mind. And this happens because the job of the rational mind is to understand things, to make sense of things. And when things don't make sense, the mind will still try to make sense of things. That's why it's called the rational mind, because its job is to rationalize, to understand things. And it is a very important job, but it's limited in its nature. So when it comes to interpersonal relationships, that rule that the mind will believe in the labels, the same rule applies. If we have a personal relationship and the person has a label, a title, the mind would believe in the title, but the body and the heart and the unconscious mind is only going to they're only going to metabolize the content, which are the actions, the duties and responsibilities. That's the only thing, because like I said, the body, the heart, and the unconscious mind, they don't believe in explanations. They only metabolize the reality of what they're receiving. But the mind will continue to believe the lies. And so when the label and the content are not compatible, then that creates a cognitive dissonance in the mind. Even though the mind is believing it, there's still a cognitive dissonance, which creates distress because there's a tension. The mind is pulling in a direction and the body and the heart are pulling in a different direction. They're not aligned, and that creates tension, distress, and eventually trauma. So let me give you an example. There's a girl who had a mother, a father, and a sister at the level of the labels. And when she was around 7 years old, her parents split up. Unfortunately, it happens. And the father left. And the father would come visit once a week, once every 2 weeks, take the kids to have ice cream, pizza, get them candies, and then drop them off. The mother, given the circumstances, she's not receiving financial support, she has to get a job to support the house. Okay, so a brief digression. The child needs many things, but to boil it down to two main components, the child needs protection and nurturance, given by two different P's. Protection could be things like, all the financial things, a house, a safe place, clothes, food, and those things, okay? Protection. And then in the nurturance, the child needs, love, empathy, mirroring, echoing, somebody who can cook, healthy food, can do homework, play, console the child, tell the child stories, and things like that. That's, basically what it is. And of course, our modern societies are very fluid and the roles are constantly changing because women have to work and that. But let's say, for the sake of argument, that the protection is given by the father and the nurturance by the mother. Again, it's debatable because of our societies, but let's say, for the sake of argument, father and mother. So in this example, this kid, instead of a father, she had, at the level of the vitamin, the content, instead of a father, she had like a friend or an uncle, because a person who comes once a week, those are not, the full duties and responsibilities of a father. Since the mother had to work and provide, instead of a mother, she has a father. So the kid, there's no mother. There isn't anybody performing that role. Like at a job, the child still needs those nutrients. And so the little sister now, instead of having an older sister, now she has a mother, because this kid had to become the mother of her sister. She had to do homework, she had to take her to school, she had to console her. Of course, with the tools of a child that are very limited, but she had to become the surrogate mother. And so instead of a sister, she has a daughter. Instead of a mother, there's a father. And instead of a father, there's like an uncle or a friend. And so those situations create those cognitive dissonances, and it creates, tension and eventually trauma. In one of his plays, Shakespeare, in Romeo and Juliet, Shakespeare said, "That which we call a rose by any other name would smell as sweet." He was basically saying the same thing. The label is not as important. What's important is the vitamin, the content, the smell of the rose. That's what matters, the reality, not the label. Now, the same thing could be said about something else. Another example that is not as pretty, but I'm not Shakespeare, so he was saying something like, "That which we call excrement by any other name would smell as not sweet." He wasn't saying that which we call excrement by the name of a rose would smell as sweet as a rose. You see, because that causes attention. That's a discrepancy. It makes no sense. It's the same thing with the labels. You know, if you put this name, it's not going to change it, whatever it is. So basically, Shakespeare was saying that what matters is the smell. If it quacks like a duck, if it smells like a duck, then it's a duck. When we grow up with these discrepancies, where the labels or the titles are not compatible with the actions, one of the things that happens is that we go through life repeating the same formula because we have trained ourselves to believe in lies and not trust what our bodies and our hearts are telling us. We are conditioned to believing to buying into discrepancies and that dissonance, that cognitive dissonance. And what happens is that we reenact those things in our adult relationships. We also have relationships where the title is not compatible with the emotional nutrients that we're receiving. Now, a couple of solutions that I think would be good to implement. The first thing is for us to focus more on the duties and responsibilities in our interpersonal relationships. Because even though they're not defined, they don't come, the interpersonal relationships don't come with a contract, but there are actions that we need to do in order to give meaning to the title. I think that would be good, to become aware of that. The second thing I think would be good is to come up with new names, new labels, to define the real relationship, the real content of what our hearts and our minds are receiving. A good example of that is the word frenemy. Frenemy is perfect because it describes exactly what it is. At the level of the label is a friend, but in the content, it's really a person who betrays you, who says bad things about you, who's not there for you. So it's a frenemy. So it's a perfect name. And those are called neologisms, which are words, new words, to describe things more accurately. So I came up with the word for a label for the sister that has to take care of her siblings, which, by the way, it's not good. It's not healthy. It's called parentification. It's not healthy. But it happens, unfortunately, sometimes. So I came up with a word, but it's in Spanish, because in Spanish, sister is hermana and mother is mamá. So the word would be hermamá for the sister that. But I don't know if it works in English. But you get the idea. And so we can come up with new names, like I said, neologisms, because those words are not just a joke like frenemy or this or that. These words are important because they help the mind not believe in lies, and it helps the mind and the heart and the body be aligned and not have that tension, that inner battle, not bottle, battle. I hope I'm pronouncing that one well. Not have that tug of war inside us where a fragment of our human existence has to believe something and the other one is experiencing something else, and we're like, So the proper words make a big difference because they help us. Oh, okay. It explains it. It helps the mind. It aligns us. Even if it hurts, at least we are aligned and everything is in sync. And since in our modern society, the roles are so fluid and they're changing so rapidly, and the families, the structure, everything changes so rapidly, but people still need the same nutrients that they've always needed. So that's why those names are very important to ensure that people, and especially children, that we are receiving the nutrients, emotional and mental nutrients that we need to develop and to function properly. And that's it. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you so much for watching.